Hello, 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 and welcome to the Healing Path. My name is Mickey Spear. I am a musician, author, and talk show host of Tonight Show. When I was 13 years old, my mom passed away from cancer, and I spent the better part of a decade avoiding my grief and pretending I was fine and really trying to convince other people that I was too. However, if you know how grief works, you know that doesn't work for too long. So eventually it came to a screeching halt, and I had no other choice other than to start leaning into my grief. Now that I know the power of addressing grief, talking openly about it, getting help, letting others in, and oh, it is so difficult. I want to spread the message to everybody to do the same. And that's what we have the show for. We have 30 minutes where we just get to touch base really quickly each week, where we get to learn how to address our own wounds, be it grief or other hard topics, as well as learn how can I love people in situations that are terrible that I just don't understand better. And tonight's show is one of the juiciest ones I have. I've been looking forward to it for months. And we are going to dive into some of the hard questions that people have for widows or widowers who get remarried. We're all thinking it. We might as well ask it. So we've got Lyn coming up from Modern Widows Club. So stay with me. We are almost ready to bring her on. But before that, I want to pause and say welcome to you and see where are you calling in from. So Lyn and I can see who is watching on the side. So in the comment section, whether that's here, there, or over there for you, just let us know whether you're watching it live or as a replay. Hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm calling in from here. We have people all over the country who watch the show, whether it's live or as a replay. And I want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your thoughts. So please keep those comments coming and we will respond to them over the next few days. And before we dive into our topic tonight, I do have some fun, exciting news for you to share. So if you are not on my email list yet, please do so. Just head over to mickeyspear.com. It's in the comment section. And I send out one and only one email per week. So I promise it is not overwhelming. And it is jam-packed full of resources, organizations, and tons of other great stuff for you to either help yourself with or have in your back pocket to share with a friend. I know Mother's Day was right this weekend, and for some of us, that's a really hard day. For others of us, it's a really happy day, and for a lot of people, it's somewhere in between. It's that weird mixed bag. So for all of you who were celebrating Mother's Day, I hope you had a fantastic one. And for those of you who are hurting this Mother's Day, just know that my heart was with you. And I sent out a whole Mother's Day email. So if you haven't looked at that email yet, be sure to check it out. It's jam-packed full of information. But there's a couple things in there that I wanted to share with you before we get to the amazing and wonderful Lyn. Just a little bit about what's going on with Mickey Spear. So I had two really cool opportunities. I was on Bob FM, which is a country station here in the Minnesota area. And I was on it last Sunday, so 2 days ago, and I was their featured guest on the Homegrown Show. So it was so cool. And in my email this week, I'm going to send you some pictures and some blogs that you can just kind of read about it and see some videos from that really neat behind the scenes experience. So what a total blessing. The second thing is that I was on Twin Cities Live today, which I'm still not sure how this all happened. It was such a God thing in the sense that a reporter reached out to me after seeing my song Light a Candle for Me circle around Facebook, which was, again, so cool that caught fire like it did. And I haven't even watched the segment yet because I was busy working and getting ready for this show, but I will watch it tonight. So just know if you're on my email list, I will send a link to that segment. So that way, if you wanted to watch me be interviewed on an official TV show, that you could do that. So thank you again, each and every one of you who are praying for me on this journey. I cannot tell you how much that means. Your encouragement, your support means the absolute world. And the last thing I want to talk about before we get to before we get to Lyn, is Jen's program. So Jenny Dot, who was at Grace in Space last summer, if you were there, you might have met her. She is just an animal extraordinaire, and she runs the company Animal Intuition. Her and I and another person are going to be doing this online event on June 5th. And I would love it if you joined us. It's called Resilient Movements for Grief. And get this, that third person, she is a yoga instructor specifically trained to how to help people move through traumatic losses, whether it be anticipatory grief or after the fact grief. And I'll be singing some music. I'll be doing yoga with you guys. You can turn your cameras off if you don't want it, but it is going to be so much fun, so healing. I've heard nothing but good things about these types of programs, and you can be anywhere in the country and join us. And again, it doesn't matter if you want your camera on or off. If you're a little shy, that's okay too. This stuff is super important. I'm ready to heal. I know I'll be bawling like a baby the whole time. So join me in that. Join me in the healing. It's on June 5th, and it is from 9 to 10:15 Central Time. If you sign up now, it is $35. And if you need scholarship, I am going to be offering a scholarship to one of my own listeners. So if money's a little tight and you can't make it, just message me and let me know. I'll talk all about that in my summary email, because I want you to be able to make it if you want to come. So again, sign up. The link is in the comments. I'll be talking a lot more about that leading up to the 5th. But if you know anybody who is grieving at any time for any reason, make sure they join us on June 5th for Resilient Movements. It's going to be powerful beyond. I'm already like ready for my expectations to be blown out of the water, and they're already pretty high. So I'll be performing then, not doing the yoga leading. You don't want to see that, but I will be doing that then too. So without further ado, let's get to our main topic of the night, where we bring on Lyn from Modern Widows Club. Just a reminder, everybody, this is Lyn. Hi, Lyn. How are you
Hey,
doing?
everybody. Thanks for having me, Mickey. And congrats on your piece on
Oh,
TCL today. I'm going to have to go YouTube it or look it up because
oh, you're so
that's
sweet.
awesome. That's so exciting. You're like real famous now,
Oh,
right? You're Twin
thank
Cities
you.
famous.
That's the hope, Lyn. That is the hope. No, I'm just kidding. I
That's
am so
awesome.
blessed, so honored, and I'll send you that link in my email afterwards. So don't go digging too long for it. But I so appreciate it. But Lyn, we are so grateful that you are on the show. I was just going to put the disclaimer: this is your story, and that everybody is different, And so I just want people to know how brave you are to be here. And I know I'm going to make you blush, and I'll just talk you up for 2 seconds. But being a widow is hard. Sharing your story is hard. Being remarried as a widow is really hard. And then coming on the show publicly to answer some of our deepest, like secret questions that we all kind of ask, but we're like we're too afraid to
Totally.
ask. That's even harder. So we are so grateful for your bravery tonight. And I'm just so glad that you are here. And before anything else, do you mind just kind of kicking it off with your story?
Sure. Well, I'll try and keep it as short and sweet as possible so you can get to all your juicy questions that you want to know. But I was widowed at 33 with 3 little kids. So my late husband's been gone almost 10 years. So it'll be 10 years in September. And my 3 kids are now all teenagers, 13, 16, and 18. And my oldest is
Fun.
headed off to college this fall. So it's, just a transition period, right? And um, Mike died from cancer. He had been sick for 27 months and passed away. And shortly after he died, a dear friend that was very close to Mike and I introduced me to Jeff. And I wasn't thinking about dating. I wasn't even in the realm of dating, but Jeff and I were a perfect fit. So I got really lucky. I only had to date once after I was widowed. I didn't have to go and do any of the other stuff that is out there and go searching for the next right one. The next right one just kind of fell in my lap. I think Mike knew that I wasn't going to do it. So I think he and God knew I just had to get given it. Um,
Yeah.
and Jeff and I will be married 8 years this June. So, and we have a
Wow.
blended family with three of my kids and three of Jeff's kids. So there are six kids.
Wow.
Our two oldest are, well, one's in college now and one is headed off to college. And then we have two 16-year-olds and two 13-year-olds. So pray
Oh
for
my
me.
gosh, full house. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm so happy that, like you said, right out of the gate, it worked out. What a total blessing. What a total God thing. That's
Absolutely.
amazing. And for those of us who watched your episode, Lyn has been on our show before. We are so blessed to have her on before. We kind of went into your story more and like the getting remarried. So we're going to direct most of those questions back to that episode. So if you haven't watched it, make sure you go back through and watch it. I'll make sure that's tagged in my email so you can just go right to the link. But high level, Lyn, I hate to put you on the spot like this.
Oh, you're
Could
fine.
you just summarize some of the what you would say to somebody who says, you know what, that seems a little fast?
Well, I've been known to be a little bit spunky and a little bit sparky on my comments, so probably wouldn't be appropriate. No, I probably would be, but um, I think my answer would be to kindly tell them that this is my story and this is my
Mm,
life. And at the time, I encountered that, and I very clearly reminded people that you know if you're widowed at 33, then you can tell me what to do. But if you're not, stay the heck out of it. Just because it's so personal. I mean, and even other widows, right, would be
mm,
surprised. And I mean, I've had even recently had a conversation with someone that was like, you got remarried pretty fast. And I'm like, well, it wasn't really. I mean, I didn't plan it. I didn't go set out to do that. I mean, I was widowed and grieving and I made this connection, right? We got introduced
yeah.
to each other and it wasn't, it was really sweet and it just works, right? And so to each their own is kind of
Mhm.
would be my kind of comment back because
Yeah.
I would never judge someone for not
Mm,
repartnering or remarrying because they just chose not to or didn't find their next right one. So I don't want to be judged for finding someone, right, that happens
yeah.
to be the next right one for me. So,
Oh, 100% amen. Put an amen in the chat feature for like, you know what, for grief, we should not have any judgment because nobody
no.
knows what you're going through. And I think that is so perfect. What do you think is the underlying reason why they would say it's too fast? Like, what do you think they're kind of implying by that statement?
So I think for a lot of people, it's the unknown, right? It scares
Mm,
them. So not that you don't get this question or comment from widows and widowers on your own too, but definitely people that aren't in a position, it scares them and it's terrifying that their spouse might die, and then what if they do, and all
mm,
the that I think a lot of what comes out of people's mouths when you're grieving or when you're going through something big like that is their fear, right? It's their feelings about the
mm.
situation directed at you, which is unfortunate, but it's sometimes how it works. But I
Yeah.
think it's also that whole emotion of they don't understand it, right? Because unless you walk that path or walk through something that is that profound, no matter what your age is, you you don't have a real true perspective on
Mm,
things. So I think it's more of a gut reaction to say something, and people just are judgmental. I mean,
yeah.
right? I mean, people just think that they can tell other people what they think and what they should do.
Oh,
But
I so appreciate you sharing that. I never would have guessed really fear. My initial reaction, and I'd love for you to correct me or critique what my thought was people would say that because they think you're over your first husband. Do you feel like that was a component where they're like, whoa, like,
um
ooh, do you not love him anymore?
totally. Yeah. I mean, people will even maybe not now anymore. It's been so long, right? Or the time has elapsed a bit. But I do think that people think that, like they think, or there's
Mm,
the appropriate amount of grieving that has to be done, right? People, I mean, I can't tell you how many, and you probably don't notice it if you're not living and breathing a
mm,
widowhood journey or a grief journey. and really paying attention to it. But you know how many TV shows and books and movies talk about grief and loss, usually for a woman, and there's a
Mm.
widow in the story, right? And then there's always this judgment, right? Of, oh, she's getting ready, no, you have to wait a year. Who decided on an arbitrary time frame, right? Because you didn't choose how long to love your first spouse or
Mm.
fall in love with them. Why should you choose what happens the next time around? I mean, it's one thing if you're choosing to go out and date, and again, I still believe that that's a personal thing, and there are going to be people that choose to do it sooner than later and others that choose never to do it, and that's totally fine. Um, but I think for my story, especially, it was really hard for me to have that judgment of thinking I was over Mike, and I'm like, really,
Mm.
yeah, I couldn't even have fathomed, and I don't know if I'll ever be over it, right? I'm never
Right.
over it. I've just worked through it and worked
Mm.
out through the other side to be able to see it and see through that grief, and you know, time heals. It doesn't take away the scar. It doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make your loss go away. It just makes it different, right?
Mm.
So, I mean, I'm always going to be Mike's widow and I will be Jeff's wife. And I
Yeah.
pray that I never have to be both widows. But we know that that's always a possibility. So,
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Let me kind of throw you a curveball to rebuttal it.
mm,
Not that this is like what I think, but these are just common things I know
totally.
through interviews that I get from people. Can you walk us through then? What was it like to be a recent widow and to start dating again, and how it's that trade-off that I think we assume you go from one to the other, and then it's kind of a hard cut.
Yeah,
How
definitely not.
could you walk us, like, give us some perspective of what it was like during the dating where you were, and I don't, is it correct to say in love with two people? I'll put that there because
Totally.
I'm
I would
trying to
say
learn.
I will always love two men, at least
Yeah.
in my heart, right? And that's the thing. It's just like I think I said on the last time when I was on on with you, I talked about how, some of the people I would say, well, when you had another child, you didn't stop loving the first one, right? Like your heart
Mm.
grew. You were able to love, your love multiplied, right? It's not divided, it's multiplied. And
Mm.
the love was multiplied on that. Dating, um, is difficult. It isn't for the faint of heart. It definitely wouldn't be for the faint of heart when it comes to probably had I had to date, or maybe be on, I don't even know all the different apps and different things because I didn't have to do any of those things. So I don't even understand that, from an aspect of it. So I think that it's not easy, but at the same time, I was really, really blessed to have a man that was willing to see the whole story, right?
Mm.
He saw and came into my life and came into my kids' life as a person that was willing to listen, understand, seek understanding that for things he didn't know, and then also be able to say, okay, I can respect that. Never feeling threatened,
Mm.
by that, or if he did, he never showed it and never expressed it to me, which I greatly appreciate and respect him more for it. Um, but it's definitely an adventure, right? I mean, it was something that took work and time, but just like anything else in life, sometimes the things worth having are worth working for.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so it's a matter of saying, looking back and trying to explain it, it sometimes seems really surreal that it all happened and that it fell into place the way it did. But he just was always willing to be a good listener and seek understanding. And so when I was having a bad day, I probably have a harder time now saying, I'm having kind of some grief moments here. I need
Mm.
some space just because we are so far out and it's
Mm.
been so long that I almost sometimes it sneaks up on me and surprises me, and I'm always like
Mm.
taken aback by it, right? The, the, Mike's anniversary, the things that we would know, those things we're always prepared for. Right now, at this point,
Yeah.
I'm mentally, emotionally prepared for it. It's the when it pops up out of nowhere, and then I'm like, oh, wait,
Mm.
how do I explain this? But
Yeah.
you know, I think that that's, for me. that was super important. From the moment this introduction happened, in my head, I went, okay, I'm not really looking for this. I'm not really thinking that this is where I want to go or what I'm looking for, but it's headed, this is obviously going to happen. Like I'm going to go out on a date and see how this goes, or maybe this is going to go, and it continued. And one of my things that I just kind of really made a big deal about for myself was he has to be understanding of this to the extent that he is willing to try. He has to respect my kids. He has to respect me. He has to respect my story and the loss that I went through. And he always did that. So,
Oh,
I think kind of setting some of those at least personal ground rules was really helpful because then it made that process easier because then I was willing to say, having a hard time right now. And I know you don't understand, and I know you're not going to understand, but I need this from you. And I think that that is also what really helped is I was willing to ask for what I needed. I need
mm.
space. I need a hug. I need you to comfort me. I need you to go the hell away. Right? Not because I don't care for you, but I need to process this in my own bubble. Right? I need to do what I need to do at this moment. Whatever that was, even if I wasn't sure what I needed, I would maybe would even say, I don't know what I need right now. So why don't we try, what what do you feel you can give me right now? So,
Mm.
and it's evolved
Yeah,
over the years, of
great.
course.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Thank you so much for being vulnerable. I so appreciate you sharing. Can you give us some examples of moments where it came up where you're like, okay, I'm happily married, or as marriage is, like it has its up and
Of
down. It's
course.
a good marriage. Yeah.
Totally.
I'm happily married. And then I'm thinking of Mike. Like, can you give us just some things like where it pops up and like what would spark those like I need space or I need this conversations?
So I think because we had little kids, I mean, and our kids are almost the same age, those grief moments bubble up. I don't know what it would be like to be older and have my kids grown and gone and have that kind of relationship. Because I'm not there yet. I still have them
Yeah.
all living at home for the most part. But from an aspect of where things bubbled up, like for example, my youngest daughter learned how to ride her bike, and Jeff taught her how to ride her bike, right? Taught her how to ride a bike without training wheels, etc. And she comes running into the front door and she's like, Mommy, come watch me. Jeffy taught me how to ride my bike. And I came outside and I watched her ride in the driveway, making circles. So proud that she's learned how to ride her bike, right? But also so desperately sad at the same time,
Mm.
because so thankful that she has Jeff in her life and she has Jeff to comfort her and teach her these things.
Yeah. I'm
And so
crying over
sad
here. Oh my gosh.
that Mike
That's
wasn't there
beautiful.
for it, right? And those moments happen every single day in my life
Mm.
because I have kids. And I'm sure they happen for women and widows that maybe their kids are grown and gone or don't have children. But when you're with your kids and those momentous moments or even the little things, you're like, oh. But then you
Yeah.
look at it and, it is the duality of our losses, right? It is the duality of that life that we live of seeing that and going, I can be sad and I can be happy all at the same time. Right. And I literally was. I was ecstatic and there were tears running down my face. And Mommy, why are you sad? I'm not, honey. I'm so proud of you. Right. Because she doesn't understand it. She's 5. She can't explain, you can't explain it. And even now, trying to explain something like that to a kid, I mean, they might be like, oh, okay. Right. I kind of get it. But, we're talking teenagers, they only know so much, and understand
Right.
so much. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where you just have to you navigate through it at the time. And again, I think I was really, really lucky to have a man that was willing to see it,
Mhm.
pause, and maybe not understand it, but be willing to just be whatever it was, right? And to step into a space and be there. So, um, yeah, I got really lucky.
Right. You did.
And I know
Oh,
it.
praise
So I'm
God.
gonna take it. I'm gonna know it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know one of the next kind of things that kind of come up, and I'm cut without going too into it. I don't even know if I'm legally allowed to go into it. But my dad had a very different experience with his second marriage than you had. And one of the big things that I think she bought into, and I think a lot of people who are not widows buy into, is that your new spouse's love and that marriage should be enough. Could you kind of dispel that in regards to like how can you be happily married and missing your spouse? Like, shouldn't their love kind of make you not miss them? Could you maybe talk a little bit about what you would
Sure.
say to somebody who rebuttals that?
I think a lot of it comes down to the whole being able to be present where you're at, right? And
Mm,
say, I am loving the life I live and the life I have, but also be able and willing to acknowledge the past, right? And where you came from. Because I'm not the woman I am today without that loss, right? I am
mm,
not able to be the wife that Jeff wants, needs, loves, and adores without that loss, right? With
yeah.
that, I wouldn't be who I am. And I also think that there is that whole willingness um, to understand, to seek to understand. And it's not uncommon that, you know, one, men tend to remarry faster. So I'm an exception to the rule by the fact that as a woman, I remarried much sooner than most widows do. But, it's also, we know as women, women tend to be more jealous, women tend to be more not understanding of that. And not that men don't, but I think men are a little bit more willing to kind of see both sides of it. And I mean, Jeff's always said, "Well, how can I be jealous of somebody that's dead?" I mean,
Mm,
he knows that I love him and I care about him. I mean, if I
mm,
didn't love and care about him, I wouldn't be with him. And I think that
yeah.
there's just that confidence, right? It is really not about the widow or widower. It is about the other person then, right? If they're struggling with that, it's really their thing to struggle with. It
Mhm.
is not ours, right? Because
Yeah.
as long as you lay it all out there, that's the other piece, right? I laid it out and said, this is all my baggage. I got a lot of it.
Right.
And it's
Right.
beautiful and it's lovely and it's wonderful and I am who I am because of it, but it's a lot to take on. So if you're
Mm,
willing to take it, great. I mean, I'm willing to go on this roller coaster ride with you. But, at the same time, he brought his own baggage with. I mean, he wasn't widowed, but he's divorced and he brought different experiences. We all do, right? We all bring different things to our relationships,
yeah.
whether it's when we're 20 years old and we're just kids and we're
Mm,
figuring out what we're doing, or we're in our 30s or 50s or 60s or 70s, right? Whatever that looks like, we bring it with
yeah.
us. And so it's all about how do you approach it. So I mean, I think
Oh,
that's
that's
the one advice I
amazing.
would give anybody is just if you're thinking about dating again, um, I think having that conversation at the appropriate time, because that's not first date conversation, but
It's not?
a
I thought that'd
couple,
be kind of
yeah,
fun to go
probably
your
not.
mini golf in.
Now, I mean, Jeff knew I was widowed when he, met me, right? He was told my story in advance by the person that introduced us, so he had a heads up. Um, but I think it's one of those things where you get to the right time, a couple of dates in, you think this is still like, that's where it needs to be like, listen, I see this relationship, or I see us at least spending a little bit more time together. I'm enjoying this, but you have to understand that I
Mm,
will always love the person that came before you. Doesn't mean that I might not fall in love with you, or, we can be in a very wonderful relationship, but I will always love the person that came before. And it
mm,
and that will never be diminished. And in my opinion, I think that if you can have that kind of honest conversation with the next whoever they are to you at that point,
mm.
and they take it well, then they're likely one to keep around for a while, right? To at least try, right? Because
Yeah.
if they kind of can't understand that concept, then because I don't know, that was so important to me. Like, you have to understand there are pictures of Mike in this house that we live
Okay.
in, that we moved in together. Jeff and I
Mhm.
purchased this house right before we got married, the one we live in now, and where we've raised our family. Um, and there was very little ground rules other than no pictures of Mike in our bedroom. That was the only off limits. Otherwise, I can look over on that wall and there's pictures
Oh,
of Mike with my kids. Upstairs, there's pictures of Mike. There's pictures of our family, the five of us. Um,
yeah.
and that's who we were. and that's who we are because that's what brought us here, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just that
Right.
evolution of things, and being in a relationships is hard. It takes work without being widowed.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, right? You know, we all do. Takes work
We all
before.
do. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful. I'm crying as a kid, who grew up in that flip-flop situation. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for sharing. That was fantastic advice. And I think that's just good for all of us to keep in mind. Keep the judgments and the backyard, right? Like there's no room for them
Mhm.
in here. And I am so grateful for your story. I think you are dispelling rumors and you're dispelling all these things maybe as we kind
Hopefully.
of secretly think.
Or
So
at
I
least
love.
reinforcing for people that are thinking like, "Hey, I kinda wanna date again," and making sure that, if they can feel
Yeah.
powerful in it, I think that's the first big
Yes.
step.
Oh, this is so beautiful. I am so sorry for your loss. I am so grateful for your story. So thank you for sharing everything with us tonight. You're part of a really cool organization, and I
I
think
am.
people should know about it. Why don't you tell us a little bit?
Sure. So I'm the program director for Modern Widows Club. We are a widows organization that helps um, widows in any stage, at any place, and any location, lean back into life, build their resilience in this loss, and really become the woman that they're meant to be post loss.
Mm,
So we're yeah, a great organization, nonprofit. I actually met the founder of our organization, gosh, 9+ years ago, literally within months of my widowhood, starting online, got connected. She was a person that she exuded what I wanted to be in my widowhood, right?
mm,
And because there was plenty of grief organizations and there's plenty of great support, especially I found for my kids, but I
mm,
needed something at 33. I think that, and no matter what your age, but for me at that point, I was looking for something that was going to help me build on and
mm.
grieve well and provide me an opportunity to be grateful at some point for what I've got. And that really, just the organization was just starting out then and just baby size. I launched a community here in Minneapolis, in the western suburbs, and served widows here for 6 years. We still have that. We have different women leading that community, but they're definitely doing an amazing job there. And from the program team, we help do all sorts of stuff. So we are actually, hopefully this week, launching registration for our first post COVID in person big gathering, right? It's super exciting. So, Widow Empowerment event is held in Houston in September. It's been held in Orlando previously.
Oh,
So, we're excited to be leaving Florida and moving to Orlando for this year and celebrating there with everyone in person. Yeah, I mean, I
yay!
can't tell you how excited I am. I'm like, I'm a people person, and I am super excited to like actually be in a space with other people, right? Um,
Yes. Oh,
so it'll
absolutely.
be wonderful. But we have everything from we have weekly newsletter too. We've got online resources, blogs. We've got a widow empowerment quiz where you can find out where you're at in your widowhood journey, because sometimes we don't know, right? Sometimes you think you are somewhere and then you're like, I'm really not there. So we have lots of great resources and tools for widows, whether they are just freshly widowed and just finding their feet, to widows that have been widowed for 10 or 15 years that are looking to find ways to give back and be resilient. So, yeah, check it out. I'd love to talk to anybody about it if they have questions. So,
Oh, thank you so much. I am so grateful for you, for your organization. Sorry about the dog in the background.
yeah.
That's how this goes working at home. But we are so grateful. Those are in the comments, Lynn. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. I will make sure all of that is in the summary
Um,
email. So thank you again. We're so grateful for you.
well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to get to join you and spend time with you.
Yay! Oh, come back soon. We'll love to
Anytime
have
you
you on
want.
the show.
I'll come back anytime you want.
Perfect. I'll take you up on that. Well, thank you so much.
Sounds
You guys, wow, that's what the show is all about, is getting perspective and learning. And I know I too we all have bias. We all have stuff going into things. So I hope you learned a little bit. If you did, let us know in the comment section. I will see you next week. Thank you again so much for being here, you guys.